Hello everybody and welcome to Forever Rugby on Forever Sports. It is 5 things learned from round 3 of the Rainbow Cup SA. One of my favorite videos to do actually, because I always think it's quite nice, you know, in doing the review of the weekend and doing like the team of the week, you start sort of having, you watch clips back and you watch the sort of games back a little bit and stuff, and you start to sort of be able to piece together certain sort of major issues and positives, but you really do start to sort of get down to the nitty-gritty of just what a simple weekend of 160 minutes of rugby can actually mean for SA Rugby in sort of the long run. And there are a lot of sort of small signs and some big red flags. Sometimes, there are things that are just sort of very much on the day it's the case. Sometimes there are sort of things that are sort of potential flags for sort of these long-standing structural issues. So it's really quite interesting. And I think that if we look at the 5 things today, probably paints quite an interesting picture for the future of SA Rugby. Not just sort of what's going to happen this weekend, but sort of more long-term and kind of where we are within our rugby setup, what we can expect in the future, what our sort of national coaches have to look forward to, maybe what sort of the European teams looking at SA, sort of trying to prepare for the Pro 16, what they can look forward to, and stuff like that. So these are sort of the 5 takeaways that we identified. If you think of anything else or anything else that you noticed, please do put them in the comments. Always love to hear from people. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you smash a like on the video if you like this sort of content as well. Without any further ado, let's get over to number 1. So it comes a bit of a stuck record when you keep talking about how good the Bulls are. And I thought that after the first 2 weekends, the Bulls, the first weekend they had a bit of a sort of a B team. But against the Stormers, you kind of sat there thinking, maybe this Bulls side isn't all bad. Maybe they're actually not as good as we think they are. Maybe they've got this aura that they don't lose and we kind of sort of giving them too much respect. Well, this weekend they came back and said, no, we've earned this respect. We are the best side in the country. You guys cannot compete. We are a different level. They are. That is the brutal truth. They are at a different level. And, I'm not saying they can't be beaten. Maybe the Lions put in a worldly of a performance and they beat them this weekend. But overall, that squad, that coaching setup, that union are a different class to the rest. So well organized. And you see it everywhere. You see it in the quality of the content they're creating on social media. You see it in the coaching staff. You see it in the players. You see it in the sponsors that they're getting, in the investment. It is a union that's just sort of ticking at the moment. It took a while. We went through a very bad sort of phase of a couple of years, but they brought in a lot of investment and they've sort of revolutionized the Bulls at the moment. And I tell you, it's a pleasure to see, really. As a Lions fan, I'm jealous. I'm very jealous of all the good things that they are doing because they are just so many. But in terms of on the field, this weekend, you look at some of the performances, something like an Albert Lowe, he's knocking on the door for a Springbok call-up. These are Gqoboka and Trevor Nyakane coming off the bench, completely changing the game for the Bulls. Morne Steyn at the ripe old age of 36, controlling the game. He's 37 years and he's potentially going to be sort of part of the Springbok side. It's incredible when you think that he's 36 years old. He's 37 in July and he's playing like that. Cornel Hendricks' transformation. And for me, it speaks to sort of how well, as I said, structurally, Joey Mangala is doing a brilliant work with that defense. So much can be said, attributed towards his work after leaving the Lions. It was a coaching masterclass. We'll talk a bit about coaching a little bit more. But I think it is safe to say at the moment, the Bulls are just doing everything right across all platforms. Getting their players involved in the club system. It's very little going wrong at the Union at the moment, which is very nice for them. It's a bit difficult for the rest of us to watch. So some good news for my Lions this weekend is that they went back to what made them so impressionable, what made them so popular, what made them so successful. And that was this attitude of we've got nothing to lose. When the Lions came back from the Super Rugby expulsion, and they beat the EP Kings in that very, very tight sort of playoff game, and they went back to Super Rugby, it was the first time that a team, the Chiefs got sort of cut away, but, this side sort of got cut and they had to fight their way back in, and they did. And I think that when they sort of arrived, they kind of sat there saying, we've been sort of the brunt of all the jokes, we've kind of been at the bottom of the food chain in SA Rugby, we've got absolutely nothing to lose. What are we going to gain by trying to play a very closed-minded, very old, sort of fashioned, sort of very boring, I'm going to be very honest, very boring style of rugby to try and grind out results? Absolutely nothing. We're not going to gain fans. We're not going to gain support. Nobody's going to want us to succeed. They're going to sit there saying that, well, this is why we don't be successful. So they decided to go on the attack, and they said, you know what, we're going to develop a really nice brand of rugby. We're going to play exciting. We're going to take risks. We are going to, be a very attacking-minded side, and it worked, and it just worked. They got to 3 finals. They didn't win them, and don't even come here with this whole, you didn't win them, it might as well not have happened. It did happen. They were the best side in South Africa for 3-4 years. They were really, really good. And this weekend, we started to see that again. We saw a side which said, you know what, we've got nothing to lose. Let's throw it around. Let's back the youngsters. That was always the philosophy. They had a team of virtually unknown players that then made Super Rugby finals. Those players then made Rugby World Cup finals. Franco Masters, Malcolm Marx, Faf de Klerk. These were all sort of products of that Lions sort of system where they just said, we're going to back some youngsters and we're going to play a nice round of rugby. And they looked so much better this weekend. So my hope is that Ivan van Rooyen sticks with that philosophy. Back some youngsters. I'm awful. I'd love to bring in some big name signings, but back a few youngsters. Don't be afraid to roll the dice and just try something. Just play without fear, and you'll hopefully get more performances like that. So despite some investment, you looked at this weekend, and I think that the Sharks lost it up front. In the first half, I thought they would be managing the game quite well, but then they just got completely bullied in the second half. And I think you look at that pack, and I think it is 5 or 6 players that could be part of a very good pack, but there are big question marks over a couple of positions. First of all, I think hooker. I think you've got to try. They need to get a hooker who's quite heavyweight, quite physical, and importantly, very good at the breakdown. They need a breakdown specialist, and I think there's a reason they're looking at Bongi Manambi to try and be a bit of an enforcer in that side as well. You've got Dylan Richardson as well. He's coming in. He's also somebody who's very good at the breakdown, can disrupt. Like that. But I also look at those 2 locks, and I think Reynold Hugo has been very good. Ruben van Heerden's also been very good. But I also think you kind of need a bit of an enforcer. You need a bit of an Etzebeth. You need a Willem Alberts sort of type role, because they just don't have that. If you look at their loose trio, they don't have an enforcer. When the Stormers play, in theory, they've got somebody like P. Steph du Toit, who can play that really sort of big character, make all those tackles, be very physical, can get over the advantage line. Bulls have got Dwayne Vermeulen and Albert Lowe. The Lions are also still lacking, but when Willem Alberts comes on, you can see the difference of having somebody in that role. And I think that's something that the Sharks are missing a little bit. I think that they are very good in the loose. They've got some very good skillful players. Oxen Chair is fantastic in the open. Henko Venter carries it up, but I think, he's a very good player. I like Henko Venter, but I think, if you were to swap him out for a P. Steph du Toit and Albert Lowe, even if it's Tuka to a certain degree, you'd start seeing a lot more sort of value in that type of player. And I think it's often because you kind of have to change things by sort of the other flank. So if you're looking at Khaleesi, you don't have a fetcher in him, but you've got somebody who's going to make a lot of tackles. You can carry the ball up if you need to, but he's a very hard-working player. So get somebody who's going to add some bulk in that number 7 jersey. Put it on a hooker who's going to add some physicality, good at the lineouts, solid at the breakdown. And I think that Sharks pack will start to become a little bit more balanced and start being able to compete, because at the moment they were just bullied. They were bullied by the Bulls. No other way of putting it. Something very long term, something very exciting is I saw 4 players this weekend who I think could don a Springbok jersey all at the same time. And they belong to 2 different families. And obviously I'm biased as a Lions fan, but 3 of them are at the Lions. But Vincent Tutuka's younger brother, Emmanuel Tutuka, came on and played together. And you look at those 2 and you think, Vincent's rise has been brilliant. I think he's definitely on the Bok radar. Him, Albert Lowe, Dylan Richardson, those are some very good players for the future in that loose trio. Emmanuel Tutuka looks in the same mold as Vincent. He's big, he's a very physical ball carrier, looks like he's got decent amount of skills, nice and hard working. And I definitely think those 2 could be on the Bok radar soon, as well as the Hendrickses, probably sooner than the Tutukas, to be honest. I think Jaden Hendrickse is one of the form scrum halves in the country at the moment. He's got everything. He has got everything. He's got good delivery, he's got a good kicking game, he's got very good game management skills. I think it's a matter of time before he plays Springboks. And if Jordan Hendrickse can play like he did this weekend on a regular basis, I think that we could see a Hendrickse 9 and 10 combo. I'm not saying that those 4 are going to be Springbok starters, in every sort of game, but I don't know why. I don't see any reason why in 4 or 5 years' time we might not be seeing 2 sets of brothers on the Springbok on the field for the Springboks at one stage. And how cool would that be? We had the Du Plessis and they were always sort of the 2 brothers in the Springboks. Imagine having 2 sets of brothers. We don't know if it's going to happen, and it's quite a long shot, but I just think those are 4 of the most talented sort of next generation. They are part of the next generation, some very exciting talents. I'd love to sort of see them sort of reach their potential. So something which always happens when you start losing games, you start getting a bit negative, but there's a very big microscope on the coaching in South Africa. And I think what is not helping is the class of Jake White. we saw a coaching masterclass by the Bulls. The way they used that squad, the way they ground out the Sharks, and they sort of, I mean, Jake White pretty much said it at halftime. He said, you know what, I played the two inexperienced props, and basically their job was to just sort of try and hold firm, just not dominate, but hold firm, get through to halftime, keep the Bulls in it. They did it. I mean, they were in the lead. And then he said, right, Lito Koboka, Trevin Yakane, on you go, two Springbok props, and they demolished the Sharks. You know, and you look at the tactics the Bulls employed and the way that they use their players, it's just so good. And I think what is being highlighted with how good Jake White is what a lot of people are complaining about with the other coaches. Is Sean Everett good enough to get that Sharks to their best they can be? Is John Dobson good enough to get that stacked Stormer squad to be the best they can be? Is Ivan van Rooyen, you know, the right man for the Lions, given the lack of experience? So there's a big microscope under the coaching staff. I'm not going to say whether they are or they aren't. You know, someone like Ivan van Rooyen is very, very inexperienced in that role. So he's sort of finding his feet. But I think there's been some very positive performances. But there's been positive performances for all these teams. Is whether they can sort of find that consistency and whether they can sort of every now and again show that sort of coaching masterclass where they go into a game and you can just see tactically they just got it right. It wasn't just a case of they played the normal game and it worked, but they actually made a few adjustments and as a result managed to sort of sway a game. You know, be able to sort of see that tactical nuance and whether not just the head coach but the coaching setups in general. You know, as I said, Joey Van Gaal is doing a fantastic job with the Bulls within Jake White. You know, it's all these sort of small sort of factors and stuff like that. So there's a big microscope under the coaching in South Africa. It'll be quite interesting to see what happens in the future. You know, are those three coaches going to be in charge in the next sort of 3 years? Will we see other big coaches coming in? You know, are we going to be able to start bringing coaches from overseas back? Are we going to get people like Mick Mallet back involved? You know, where do we go? You know, as you can see, you're going to come back back to South Africa. You know, how's Peter de Villiers going to do? It's quite an interesting time for coaches in South Africa. But those are sort of the 5 things that we noticed. Let me know what you thought down in the comments below. Do smash like on the video. Do subscribe. My name is Steven. Thank you very much for watching. I'll check you very soon.